Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as read by Lord Naren White. "Why," said he, "a magician could call up a lot of genies, and they would hash you up like nothing before you could say Jack Robinson. They are as tall as a tree and as big around as a church." "Well," I says, "suppose we got some genies to help us. Can't we lick the other crowd then?" "How you going to get them?" "I don't know." "How do they get them?" "Why, they rub an old tin lamp or an iron ring, and then the genies come tearing in with the thunder and lightning or ripping around, and the smoke a rolling, and everything they're told to do they up and do it. They don't think nothing of pulling a shot tower up by the roots and belting a Sunday school superintendent over the head with it, or any other man." "Who makes them tear around so?" "Why, whoever rubs the lamp or the ring. They belong to whoever rubs the lamp or the ring, and they've got to do whatever he says. If he tells them to build a palace 40 miles long out of diamonds, and fill it full of chewing gum or whatever you want, and fetch an emperor's daughter from China for you to marry, they've got to do it, and they've got to do it before sunup next morning, too. And more, they've got to waltz that palace around over the country wherever you want it, you understand?" "Well," says I think they are a pack of flatheads for not keeping the palace themselves, instead of fooling them away like that. And what's more, if I was one of them, I would see a man in Jericho before I would drop my business and come to him for the rubbing of an old tin lamp." "How you talk, Huck Finn. Why, you'd have to come to me when he rubbed it, whether you wanted to or not." "What? And I as high as a tree and as big as a church? All right, then, I would come. But I lay I'd make that man climb the highest tree that was in the country." "Shucks. It ain't no use to talk to you, Huck Finn. You don't seem to know anything somehow. Perfect saphead." I thought all this over for 2 or 3 days, and then I reckoned I would see if there was anything in it. I got an old tin lamp and an iron ring, and went out in the woods and rubbed till I sweat like an Injun, calculating to build a palace and sell it. But it warn't no use, none of the genies come. So then I judged that all that stuff was only just one of Tom Sawyer's lies. I reckoned he had believed in the Arabs and the elephants, but as for me, I think different. It had all the marks of a Sunday school. Chapter 4. Well, 3 or 4 months run along, and it was well into the winter now. I had been to school most all the time, and could spell and read and write just a little, and could say the multiplication table up to 6 times 7 is 35. And I don't reckon I could ever get any further than that if I was to live forever. I don't take no stock in mathematics anyway. At first I hated the school, but by and by I got so I couldn't stand it. Whenever I uncommon tired, I played hockey, and the hiding I got next day done me good and cheered me up. So the longer I went to school, the easier it got to be. I was getting sort of used to the widow's ways too, and they weren't so raspy on me. Living in a house and sleeping in a bed pulled on me pretty tight mostly. But before the cold weather, I used to slide out and sleep in the woods sometimes, and so that was a rest to me. I liked the old ways best, but I was getting so I liked the new ones too a little bit. The widow said I was coming along slow but sure, and doing very satisfactory. She said she weren't ashamed of me. One morning I happened to turn over the salt cellar at breakfast. I reached for some of it as quick as I could to throw over my left shoulder and keep off the bad luck. But Miss Watson was in ahead of me and crossed me off. She says, "Take your hands away, Huckleberry. What a mess you're always making." The widow put in a good word for me, but that weren't going to keep off the bad luck. I knowed that well enough. I started out after breakfast feeling weird and shaky, and wondering where it was going to fall on me. And that it was. "There, you see? It says for consideration. That means I have bought it off you and paid you for it. Here's $1 for you. Now you sign it." So I signed it and left. Miss Watson's black, Jim, had a hairball as big as your fist, which had been took out of the fourth stomach of an ox, and he used to do magic with it. He said there was a spirit inside of it, and it knowed everything. So I went to him that night and told him Pap was here again, for I found his tracks in the snow. What I wanted to know was what he was going to do, and was he going to stay? Jim got out his hairball and said something over it, and then he held it up and dropped it on the floor. It fell pretty solid and only rolled about an inch. Jim tried it again, and then another time, and it acted just the same. Jim got down on his knees and put his ear against it and listened, but it weren't no use. He said it wouldn't talk. He said sometimes it wouldn't talk without money. I told him I had an old slick counterfeit quarter that weren't no good because the brass showed through the silver a little, and it wouldn't pass nohow, even if the brass didn't show, because it was so slick it felt greasy, and so that would tell on it every time. I reckoned I wouldn't say nothing about the dollar I got from the judge. I said it was pretty bad money, but maybe the hairball would take it, because maybe it wouldn't know the difference. Jim smelt it, and bit it, and rubbed it, and said he would manage so the hairball would think it was good. He said he would split open a raw Irish potato, stick the quarter in between, and keep it there all night. And next morning you couldn't see no brass, and it wouldn't feel greasy no more. And so anybody in town would take it in a minute, let alone a hairball. Well, I knowed a potato would do that before, but I had forgot it. Jim put the quarter under the hairball and got down and listened again. This time he said the hairball was all right. He said it would tell my whole fortune if I wanted it to. I says, go on. So the hairball talked to Jim, and Jim told it to me. He says, "Your old father don't know yet what we're going to do. Sometimes he spec he'll go away, and then again he'll stay. The best way is to res easy and let the old man take his own way. These two angels have going to be. There's ways to keep off some kinds of these two angels have going to be. There is ways to keep off some kinds of bad luck, but this wasn't one of them kind, so I never tried to do anything, but just poked along low-spirited and then went out. I went down to the front garden and clumb over the stile where you go through the high board fence. There was an inch of new snow on the ground, and I seen somebody's tracks. They had come up from the quarry and stood around the stile a while, and then went on around the garden fence. It was funny they hadn't come in after standing around so. I couldn't make it out. It was very curious somehow. I was going to follow around, but I stooped down to look at the tracks first. I didn't notice anything at first, but next I did. There was a cross in the left boot heel made with big nails to keep off the devil. I was up in a second and shinning down the hill. I looked over my shoulder every now and then, but I didn't see nobody. I was at Judge Thatcher's as quick as I could get there. He said, "Why, my boy, you were all out of breath. Did you come for your interest?" "No, sir," I says. "Is there some for me?" "Oh, yes. A half-yearly is in last night. Over $150. Quite a fortune for you. You had better let me invest it along with your $6,000, because if you take it, you'll spend it." "No, sir," I says. "I don't want to spend it. I don't want it all, nor the $6,000 neither. I want you to take it. I want to give it to you, the $6,000 and all." He looked surprised. He couldn't seem to make it out. He says, "Why, what can you mean, my boy?" I says, "Don't you ask me no questions about it, please. You'll take it, won't you?" He says, "Well, I'm puzzled. Is something the matter?" "Please take it," says I, "and don't ask me nothing. Then I won't have to tell no lies." He studied a while and then says, "Oh, I think I see. You want to sell all your property to me, not give it. That's the correct idea." we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.